What is a pivot chart and pivot table? We already have seen what a pivot chart and its capabilities are. We've also seen a pivot table. Well, if we put them together, you're right in there, a pivot chart that is connected to a pivot table. We did that previously. So why are we talking about it again? Simple. This one is out of the box. It is an option that you click on it and it'll provide you both together, connect them for you, and as soon as you add data to it, you just check the columns and it will automatically update them both. That is very useful actually. With one single click, you have both available. Now let's go ahead and look at a demo and use it in real life. Let's go ahead and start as usual opening Excel from scratch. Let's open a blank workbook and head to Power Pivot. Notice that we're not going to see what we're looking for here. We're going to see it on the insert. Now that we're there, we're going to click on Pivot Chart. Last time we clicked on it, we just chose Pivot Chart. Now we're going to click Pivot Chart and Pivot Table. Now we're going to choose an external data source, but notice we don't have one. Well, let's go ahead and create one. Cancel everything, go into Power Pivot, Manage, get the external data from Access, and choose Northwind. Let's test the connection as usual. Click Next and select our order details with selected related tables, finishing it up. Let's close it. And notice we have data that was successful. Let's head back into Excel. And this time around, we should be able to add the pivot chart and pivot table. We choose our external data source, which now does exist, and choose a new worksheet. Notice that this time around, we received two objects out of the box. Pivot table to the left, chart 1 to the right. Let's collapse everything and choose what we need. We're looking from products, a category. And we're looking from product order details, the quantity. There we go. Let's format it, comma, and remove those two decimal ones. Let's add some additional conditional formatting, and let's make it a little bit fancier this time around. And let's see if this one will do. Okay. Not the end of it. We chose a chart. A chart can always be modified. Let's go ahead and select one that'll be much easier to read. This one works fine. Okay. We have a few slicers here that we could definitely use to improve the readability of our dashboard. Let's go ahead and add a few of those. Let's start with category. And we've gotten familiar with the date. Let's go ahead and look for a date in the orders table, ship date. Add it as a slicer. Now, this slicer, let's go ahead and notice that we missed something here. What did we miss? We did not choose it accordingly. When we used the date, we chose a slicer, but we did not choose a timeline. So let's click on it, delete it, and substitute it with this one. Notice that it's indicating that it has all periods, and that's fine. I'm going to adjust the screen a little bit more, leaving this here and probably moving it to the right. Now that we have some real estate there available for us, it should be a lot easier to read. Here we go. And we're adjusting it accordingly. We have both of our slicers. We can pick and choose and adjust on this side. It's still a long list, but it is a lot easier to read now. We can move upwards. Just select this one, and it does work for both. We can click beverages, and baked goods, and candy, and canned fruit, and canned meat. And it's adjusting accordingly. We can also move the timeline here. June, July, and August. Didn't change that much there, but we did notice some sales that are happening. Notice that right now we easily created and took advantage of the power pivot chart and the pivot table, merging them together, easily creating a dashboard with not much of effort there. Yes, we still need some more customization and probably could use a little bit more of prettification or making it a lot more appealing to the eye. But this is just scratching the surface. Once more, I strongly encourage you to keep exploring. The more you practice with your pivot charts and pivot tables, the more you'll find that there's so many other choices and options that you can explore and expand that you get better and better. Practice makes perfection. Creating KPIs. One of the things that are really dependent and go hand by hand with dashboards are KPIs. One way or another, you want to establish a metric that you can quantify, measure against, and determine how well you're doing or how bad. Hopefully, things are doing not that bad at all. But you also have to keep in mind that when you're creating them within Power Pivot, they depend on an existing calculated field. If you do not have one, then you're not going to be able to create a KPI itself. And you can't reuse that calculated field again. It's specifically assigned for that purpose. So those are a few caveats that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about KPIs. Also, a goal. As mentioned before, you're wanting to compare against a specific number. Why? If you can't compare against a specific starting number or a goal that you have, then how are you going to measure how well you're doing or how off you are? Those are the items you have to keep in mind when thinking about KPIs within your dashboard. Now, this can be easily explained furthermore by going into a demo that we're going to delve in a moment. Let's go ahead and open our beginning dashboard data only workbook. Once we have it open, we'll notice that we have already a starting point. So the next step is let's add a KPI. We click on our Power Pivot and we notice that it's available here. But as mentioned before, if I click on new KPI, it tells me you do not have any calculated fields. It's making sure, letting us know that we have to have one as mentioned before. Therefore, we cannot create a KPI. So let's follow the rules and go ahead and create a calculated field. We click on calculated fields and the new calculated field. We choose table name. In this case, we're going to be basing it on order details, the quantities that were sold. When naming your calculated field, do it as mnemonic as possible. Yes, sometimes it can be painful to have long names, but in the long run, it'll be easier for you to identify them whenever you start adding them more and more at the time. In this case, I'm just going to prefix it with CF, calculated field, underscore, the sum of quantity. That said, and that having in mind, a description is always welcome, and it's a good idea to always fill it in. I'm just going to copy and paste for the sake of this example, and now we can start adding our formula. As mentioned before, we're going to base it against the sum of quantity. So if we type in the bracket, notice that we have already the sum of quantity listed. Let's check our formula, and it says that there are no errors, so we are good to go. Let's click OK. And notice now that under order details, we have now the sum of quantity. That's great. Let's go ahead and create our KPI now. Now we see that we don't have the error that we saw before, and it's already knowing that we have one calculated field to choose from, which we'll leave as is. We were talking about goals, and this is where you would set this specific goal. I'm going to go ahead and modify it to 75. You could always adjust your values on the thresholds up or down depending on your needs. You could choose your select icon styles, your targets. All of these are modifiable. So take your time when you have further down the road to look and explore the options that really might fit best your needs. Once I have chosen my starting point, I click OK. Notice that our screen just refreshed. Let's scroll down, and now we have a new column here. Let's take a look at what happens when I click goal. I checked it. It shows the exact number I had chosen before. Now let's choose the status. Now we see how it compares. As mentioned before, we're comparing the sum of quantity against the goal we had set of 75. And it's telling us that according to the thresholds that we had chosen, we are in green. We are doing well. Now with 40, not so well, and definitely at 25, that does not bode well for us. Well, we're probably thinking, we're being very forgiving with these numbers. What if we wanted to modify it? Well, let's go. That can be easily done by clicking your KPIs dropdown and managing your KPI now. Notice that it exists, and we click Edit. We can modify it again, and for this case, we're going to modify it to 50. We're going to be less forgiving here and increase the threshold and reduce this one as well. We click OK. Notice we still are doing very well. Time to up the ante. Let's modify threshold and increase it as higher possible, and even make it to 65. Things have changed a little bit. Like I said before, you have to play with these to see which ones really would fit your needs best, because they vary according to industry, company, and individuals themselves. Once we have our KPIs, this is a good way to assess and compare your needs, as in this case, how we're doing against our sales, the quantity that were sold during that time, and we can see them here in a colorful way.